All right, so let's actually, before we do anything, let's delete the CSS file. We don't need it, at least not yet. So in this video and the next video, I want to sort of go through an outline of the entire course to sort of give you an idea of what you're going to be learning and when you're going to be learning them, and basically just what you can expect from it. So in the next section, we're going to start learning HTML and CSS in conjunction with each other. So I'm not going to teach you HTML and then in the next section teach you CSS. I'm going to teach you both of them at the same time, like in parallel. And it's going to be really basic stuff, so it's going to be really easy. But the reason why I think it's best to teach them at the same time is because they just go so well together. Learning HTML without learning CSS is really boring because HTML looks really bad without CSS. And you also can't learn CSS without also knowing some HTML, because CSS directly manipulates what HTML looks like. So they kind of need to be taught together. And then after that, in section 3, we're going to be moving to JavaScript and be more JavaScript oriented for the next 3 sections after that. So the first section of JavaScript is going to be more of like a crash course into the basics of JavaScript. And in this section, I'm not going to be at all focused on JavaScript for web development, because one of the ways I see JavaScript is it's a real programming language that has real features that can be used and is used very frequently on the web. I mean, JavaScript is only as popular as it is today because of the web. Basically, if you want to run code on the client side on a desktop, like inside a browser, you only have the option of using JavaScript. So JavaScript has like a monopoly on that, and that's probably why JavaScript is so popular. It's one of the most popular languages on Stack Overflow. It's really popular programming language, and it probably wouldn't be at all popular if it wasn't for that. Also, it's not just used for websites. It's not like CSS or HTML. You could make anything you wanted with JavaScript. So in the first section, I'm going to be sort of separating JavaScript from a website and just teach you what JavaScript itself does and how it works. And then in the next section after that, I'm going to start moving to basically JavaScript in a website. To do that, we're going to learn about the DOM. The DOM is it's an acronym for Document Object Model. The Document Object Model API is part of HTML. It's like a core thing in HTML that allows JavaScript code to interact with your website through what's called the document object, basically the document object. So the document object will basically be like a tree of your entire website. Everything, every tag, every CSS style, everything that makes your website, at least the front end aspect of it, will be available to be able to be interacted with by the DOM API with JavaScript. So what that means is you will be able to create HTML tags with JavaScript. So for example, if somebody clicks a button, you could cause that button to run some code that changes the look of your website through the DOM API. You will be able to update elements, you'll be able to delete them, and you'll be able to also read the content of them all with JavaScript. So that's really useful. And then finally, we will end off the 3-part sections with JavaScript by creating this JavaScript project called Clockworks. I'm going to demonstrate it for you here right now quickly. It's a very simple project. There's some HTML and CSS. There is a visual aspect to it, so it's not just JavaScript, but it's mostly JavaScript. So what it does is it's basically a timer. If you want to time yourself for 10 minutes or 2 minutes, it could do that for you. So you could put 1 minute. You could add seconds. You could add seconds like 42 as well, but this thing goes up by 5s because it just made more sense to do that. So, and then you could start, and it will start counting down for you. And you could also pause it, and it doesn't tick anymore, and you can continue it, and it continues. And then also notice that while it's ticking down, you can't change the minutes or seconds anymore. They're completely locked. And if you pause it, they're still locked. But then if you stop, the time over here resets to its default, what it's supposed to be, and then these are free again. Also, if you go down to a 5-second timer, if we let this run out completely, we will hear a little alarm that signals that the timer is up. Just like that. So this is going to be the first project that we do. It's quite simple, but it'll show us how we could use JavaScript and HTML and CSS to create a real thing that people could actually maybe want to use. Okay, then after the JavaScript sections, we move on to a CSS oriented part of the course. During this part of the course, we will cover 4 sections where I break down some more advanced or intermediate CSS. We start off with a section that's just called Intermediate CSS. And in this section, we'll learn about more powerful units such as the EM, the REM. We'll learn about how to make CSS animations and transitions, stuff like that. We'll learn how to use the CSS position property to basically position elements however you might want to. And then after that, we'll move to a Flexbox section. It's a little bit hard to explain Flexbox right now, but basically it's a very powerful way to organize your HTML elements, and it's also a really powerful way to create page layouts that are very responsive to a screen size. After that, we'll start learning Sass. Sass is a CSS preprocessor. It's not a completely new programming language at all. There is some new features to it that doesn't exist in CSS, so there is a little bit more to learn. But basically, it's a CSS preprocessor that will help you automate some of your writing of CSS code. So that's just really awesome. And then we end this little section on CSS with creating this project called Travel Forest. So Travel Forest is a CSS oriented project. There's a lot of styles, there's a lot of animations, there's a lot of cool things going on here. So let me just show you what this project looks like. So when we refresh the page, it animates in, and if you click enter, we get this nice little animation. Pretty cool. If we hover over here, we reveal a little form. That's great. Then if we scroll down, we got this section. So I'm just going to go through very quickly here. This is what it looks like. Pretty cool. And this is going to be created using basically everything that we learned over the previous 3 sections. We're going to use a lot of CSS positioning. We're going to be using Sass to write all of our CSS. We're going to be using Flexbox. Basically everything that we learned about CSS up to this point, we're going to be incorporating it into this project. After that, I'm going to dedicate a section to HTML5 and most notably the APIs that are introduced in HTML5. So there's not much more to say about that. We're going to be learning about videos and some of the new HTML5 attributes, but mostly the most important thing is the browser storage APIs. After that section on HTML5, we are going to be creating this to-do list app. And this is what it looks like right here. So let me just go ahead and create some tasks for the list. Okay, so notice that as we create tasks, the text will actually get smaller. So if we just create a few more, the task text will actually get smaller as we create more. I could just go quickly over here and just say few more. So they will just continually get smaller as we create more, and then when we delete them, they will get bigger based off how much space is available right here. So that's going to be pretty cool. And another thing is we got this little hamburger icon over here. And okay, actually, before I show you the hamburger icon, I just want to say that because this project is going to be incorporating the HTML5 APIs that we learned in the section previous, if we refresh the page, all of our data, all of our tasks are remembered by our browser. So we could leave and come back whenever we want, create tasks, delete them. If we just like delete these and I click refresh, or I could even do this, close it, reopen it, and they're still remembered. This is because of basically the browser storage and IndexedDB API that we're going to be using. So lastly, I just want to show you that this hamburger icon, if we click on it, it slides this thing out here and it shows you our recently completed tasks. There is a reset all, which if we clicked on it, it would reset everything. It would set these numbers to 0, which tell us how much tasks we have and how many we've completed so far. And it would also delete all the tasks right here. And one of the cool things about this project is there is a theme option. So if we wanted a dark theme, we could just click this and we got a dark theme. Great. So that's the to-do list project. Okay, so from there, we're going to move to Bootstrap. So Bootstrap, I'm going to have one section dedicated to learning the basics of Bootstrap. So Bootstrap is just a CSS framework that allows you to quickly design a responsive site in a very simple way without having to write any of your own CSS code. So that's pretty great. Let's look at what the next section will look like in the Bootstrap project that we're going to create after that. So here is the project that we're going to create using Bootstrap. So it's not 100% using Bootstrap. We are creating some of our own custom styles. For example, the video that we have in the background here, that's positioning that and getting that to be the right size is something that Bootstrap doesn't let you do. So you do have to write some of your own code, but this entire website that I'm going to show you right now is, I think it's less than 200 lines of CSS. So mostly all of it is just using Bootstrap. So let's see what it looks like. So there's the animations, they fade in as we scroll down. That's pretty cool. And also Google Maps. And this is a real Google Maps API that we're gonna see how we could do this. Great, let's get out of here, go back up. Before moving on to the back end, I want to spend one more section covering advanced JavaScript. So because a lot of the work in the back end will revolve around writing JavaScript code, I think it makes sense to learn some of the more intermediate or advanced JavaScript features such as promises, object destructuring, functional array methods, things like arrow functions, so stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff that JavaScript offers that I didn't at this point in the course teach because it was a bit too much to take in, but I think this is a good place to teach all those extra things that JavaScript offers that we will be using a lot of in the back end and for the rest of the course. So that's going to be it for the front end. Now let's see what we're going to do in the back end.